This is the week 3 lecture for interoperability for emergency managers. And this week's lecture has a strong focus on social media. Now, people have a wide range of opinions when it comes to social media that span from love to hate and indifference to ambivalence. And for some, a full day without Facebook is unthinkable, and for others, Twitter itself is inherently evil. There are any number of reasons for this, and my goal is not to convince you otherwise. Well, mostly. If you choose not to participate in social media on a personal level, I completely understand. However, I submit that this week's material is designed to push you toward having a digital presence in your professional life as an emergency manager. If you do not, it's not just that you're, not cool. It's that you're missing opportunities to solve problems. Graduate classes are filled with a wide range of ages and experiences, and in fact, after reading your answers to the introductory discussion board, it's clear there is a pretty diverse age range in this class. One of the first things that's helpful to determine is whether you are what's known as a digital immigrant or a digital native. Now, as a general rule, digital immigrants are those that were born before 1980 and have had to learn how to use many current technologies later in life. Those born after the 80s have been surrounded by the technology their entire lives and frankly would not have a grasp on what life would be like without them. Now, this could quickly devolve into a generational discussion like boomers versus Xers versus millennials, etc. However, it's not quite that straightforward. Even among those that were born after 1980, there are those that were born after 1993. And that group basically did not grow up in a world without smartphones or without Google. The reason I even need a slide about this is not because of the existence of technology. Technology was invented in 1980, at least in the computerized variety. But it's because your status as either a digital immigrant or a digital native actually affects your worldview. The digital native's view, for example, is very decentralized. Because of today's technology, the connectedness that exists between any two people from any two stations, or for that matter, even two geographic locations in life is very real. The ability to share information, photos, videos, experiences in real time across the globe is a serious paradigm shift for digital immigrants like me. But used correctly, these tools can be leveraged to organize, to inform, to lead, to learn, even to save lives. It's not about right and wrong, it's about wisely using the resources available to you. To disregard social media in the contemporary emergency management world, in my opinion, is foolish. It's not a panacea, but it can be an incredibly effective tool in your toolbox. And by the way, fellow immigrants, it's free. We learned from our text in the Haddo and Haddo book that 80% of U.S. adults have a mobile connection to the web through a smartphone or a tablet, and that news, of course, can be accessed, generated, and interestingly enough, even influenced or shared wherever they are and at any time of the day. As it relates to traditional media, we see that newspaper employment rates are at an all-time low, and a number of major American cities have no daily newspaper. Crazy to me. There have been reductions in editorial and reporting staffs across both newspaper and magazine sectors. And we also see that Time magazine is the only weekly magazine that remains. I think they just went out as well. Conversely, 39% of Americans get their news online. News consumption's up for all ages. And you see that a lot of people get their news actually from Twitter and other various news applications. Some specific examples of how social media was used by everyday people during some recent crises. We see right here information that people got their news regarding the Boston Marathon bombing. 56% of them got them directly from a social networking site, and then likewise, Boston Police Department went from having 40,000 followers to 300,000 followers during that short period of time. So that's and then 20 million tweets is just about the 2012 superstorm known as Hurricane Sandy. So that's 20 million pieces of information that's being shared, many by people right at the scene of the disaster. There is no governmental agency in the world that could amass that much intelligence in such a short span of time. This also means that a lot of information and opinions are being shared across the nation. If you were an emergency manager, wouldn't you want to be a part of that conversation, whether it was to hear what people were saying or to be a contributing voice? Social media is an avenue to provide real-time information both ways, from the community to the first responders and to the people from emergency managers. Through the use of social media, emergency managers and other governmental leaders are able to provide situational updates to millions instantaneously. Now that is interoperability. Consider the events of Ferguson, Missouri in 2014. There were over 7.8 million tweets that included, quote, hashtag Ferguson. So watch this time-lapsed heat map of the tweets that took place following the results of the grand jury's decision in this case. It's a fascinating graphic that shows how an event that takes place in a city that covers only 6 square miles and has a population of 21,000 people generates a conversation among hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions, of people across the entire country in a very short amount of time. Other current social media technologies include live streaming applications such as Periscope, which is tied to Twitter, and Facebook Live. These technologies put the power of information sharing, literally, in your own hands. Getting information out that is in real time and is unedited is as simple as clicking a few buttons on a smartphone. The police department I worked for began using this technology just within the last few years and the result has been almost exclusively positive. Pictured here is one of the first incidents where live streaming was used by us. One of my officers was involved in a shooting during a traffic stop near an elementary school. The driver attempted to run the motor officer over, resulting in the officer shooting the driver to save his own life. Within minutes of the event, one of our public information officers was on scene and broadcasting current information via her cell phone. She was able to provide updates about the evacuation of the school, where the students were being taken, the status of the officer and of the suspect, and she provided ongoing updates regarding traffic conditions. Viewers were able to post questions that she was then able to answer live on the video as well. It wasn't perfect, and it certainly wasn't polished, but honestly, I don't believe anyone cared about that. What was important was that accurate, real-time information from a reliable source was being distributed to anyone with a social media account that was following the police department. Now imagine you were a parent of a child that was attending school about 100 yards away from this incident. How valuable would that technology be to you at that moment? This is why it's important to set aside personal fears about social media when it comes to fulfilling the role of being an effective emergency manager. Putting your comfort zone in the rearview mirror to achieve something that benefits the people you serve is certainly a sacrifice worth making 10 times out of 10. Now, lest I present only one side of the story, it's important to remember that these tools can cut both ways. Just as it is effective in getting quality real-time information, social media can also be the source of real-time specious misinformation. From an emergency management point of view, we have to be careful how we digest the information that flows in. So consider the following two examples from the events of Ferguson, Missouri. First, there was a series of tweets that perpetuated the rumor that officers stopped and arrested the occupants of a white pickup truck that were just trying to give others rides home. The truth was that, of the 12 passengers, 2 were armed with guns, and 1 person in the bed of the truck had a Molotov cocktail. And in a second example, there was information that protesters were breaking into a McDonald's to get milk to help with their reaction to the tear gas, presumably to be able to stay in the fight, so to speak. In reality, it was parents trying to get into the restaurants to protect their children from the tear gas, and the McDonald's employees actually gave the people the milk. It's a bizarre situation that's evolved. In one sense, the massive amounts of unfiltered information makes it a prime source for misinformation. Yet in another sense, it provides an opportunity to access information that a news outlet may otherwise have chosen not to publish. In fact, a friend of mine that works as a criminal intelligence analyst for the Missouri State Highway Patrol told me a rather unsettling story. I was told of some of the things that were happening that did not make the news during the Ferguson event. One of those stories, a major news organization, was on scene when police officers were taking gunfire. The nationally renowned news organization actually had footage of the incident and even of a police car with freshly made bullet holes that fled the area. The story never saw the light of day. When the state police contacted the news organization to ask about the situation, they simply said, "Well, we didn't think it was newsworthy." This is exactly why it is important that social media should be used by emergency managers. They can promulgate information without the aid and editing of traditional media sources. As you consider the place of social media in your professional future, recognize that it can be used virtually, pardon the pun, in all 4 phases of emergency management. Becoming familiar with it and learning how to leverage it effectively is an entirely different venture, but acknowledging its place in the contemporary emergency management world is essential.